These videos we have seen how to create a user from AWS console and how to generate access keys, and we've also seen how we can configure those access keys in Windows in the credentials file. So once that setup is done, now it's time to write some code using AWS SDK. So to start with that, I will create a Java project, Java Gradle project, and do the initial configuration. So basically, what we will be doing is we have to download, or we just have to configure those SDKs in our library or in our project. So I'll just first get started with the Java project. Okay, so I will just click on just open IntelliJ and just click on new project, Gradle, Java, then click on next. Let me give some name to it. AWS learnings, AWS learnings, yeah, and yeah, just click on finish. Okay, it is doing the setup, initial setup. So this is the build.gradle where we have to configure whatever the libraries related to the AWS. So meanwhile, I will just open like what are the things that we really have to configure here. So if we go to search for AWS SDK Java manual, you see this is the complete AWS SDK, but this is really not required because it depends on like what module or what is the thing that we want to perform. Whether you want to create a user or you want to connect and create an instance, whatever is the action, accordingly you can download that library. So it's not really required to download everything. So just go to this section. You see, there is Amazon S3, and then there are DynamoDB, different things, right? So now I will start with the demo. For the first thing would be to create a user programmatically. So we have seen how we can create a user from AWS console. Now this time we will see how we can create. So I would say, okay. So you can see AWS this one. Okay, just take the latest one. We will just have to use this gradle. Okay. Meanwhile, let us come back here. I think the build is done now. So just take this and paste it over here. Okay. I'll just refresh. So it builds the project. It will import, sorry, the IAM related libraries environment for us. Okay, the setup is done. Now we'll just start with, as I mentioned, we'll start with the create user. Okay, so we'll just create here a new Java class. Let me create a package first. Just create a package. Say AWS learnings dot IAM or AWS dot IAM. Okay, it's too long. But yeah, it's fine. So now create a class. What we will say user demo or IAM user demo. Okay, yeah. So there is there are certain steps that we have to follow whenever we are working with AWS SDK. So there will be a client associated with each type of module. Like if we are doing with IAM module, we have to create IAM client first, and Then we have to create a request accordingly. Suppose if you are writing a program for creation of user, you have to create user request or whatever the relevant thing. Then you have to, using this client, you have to pass this request to the client, and you just have to kind of run that or just build that. Sorry for that. And then you will get a response. If in case if the response gives you some fields, you can just capture it and return that field. So that is how we can do it. So for this, in order to write for this IAM user creation, I will just create first one static class. Okay, we can directly do it in a main, but yeah, I'll just keep a separate method. So we will, what we have to, so in general, think like, if you are creating a user, what exactly you need, you just have to give a username, right? That's the only thing we usually do. And of course, if you are doing it from the UI, we have seen we will attach it to the group, and we can attach some policies, and we can also download the access keys. So same thing we will be doing, but there are certain steps. You can create a user separately, and then you can create access keys separately, and you can attach that user to a specific group. That is also a different thing. Okay. So now let us start with creating a user. So let's say it returns the username. Of course, we are giving the username, but yeah, create user. So as I mentioned here, we just have to create IAM client. So we will just keep it in a try catch block, because there are, whenever we are dealing with IAM, it may result in IAM exception. So there are all like if it is IAM exception will be there, and if it is related to EC2, you will get EC2 related exceptions. So you can see IAM exception should be coming here. Okay, just running wrong. Okay, let's see. IAM client, I think the library did not pull. I can go back to and here. Mm-hmm. Let me just make it as implementation. Okay, just build it. Okay, now let us see. Yeah. So here also you should be able to find. I think that should be. I think I copied a different one, so it should be not test implementation. It should be implementation. So what we will get is probably this exception, IAM exception, as I was mentioning, right? So you just print that as an error. Print that. So in all these exceptions also, if you see, when you just give this, then you can directly print this localized message or anything. But here you see AWS error details. This is what you can check actually. And you just do this, and it gives you that error message and what is the error code, etc. All the details, right? So you just print that error message. Okay. Now, if you want to exit, you can just add system.exit, etc. But I just print this message. That's it. So now, as I mentioned, we just have to create the client first, and then we have to create requests, and then we have to perform the next action or running that request against that client. Okay, so how to create a client? So this is also, there is a certain, I mean, in all clients, like whether you go with IAM or AC2, will have similar kind of structure. So where you will have like this. Just have to create this one. How do you create this IAM client? Again, just use the same IAM client and do a builder. You have this builder. Okay, just do a builder. Then when you are doing this, now this is where we just have to think. So we configured the credentials. How this program is going to know, like, you added the access keys over there. So this is where we just have to pass the credential. It's not like you just have to pass the path of that credential file or anything. I mean, there are various type of credential classes that are defined in this SDK, because there are various ways. As I mentioned, you can store them in environment variables, you can store them in system properties, you can store them in the credential one, or you can directly pass it here. So because we followed the credential file approach, it is like you created a profile there. If you remember, we created a profile called default profile here. Yeah, right. So this this profile credential provider is the profile credentials provider is the one which we have to use now. So whenever you are creating a client, you just have to pass this uh, credentials provider. So what I said is, because we used this approach, we just have to use profile credentials provider. Okay. So you just do this again. It's like you do this builder dot build. That's it. This is going to get you that value or internal logic of making whatever the connection you're creating a client. So the internal connection will automatically happen using our credential with this implementation. Now you just call the build method. So you're not doing anything here. Okay, you can even add region if required, but it's not really needed for now. But yeah, this is how you can create a client first. You just have to pass this credential for sure whenever you are doing it for any method or any process. Now you just have to do. I said you just have to create a request, right? So for this user, there is a request that is, you can search create user request. Yeah. So just take this as a request, and it's a similar thing again. Create user request. You see here builder dot build. So before build, actually, what you just have to do, just type here what we said. You have to pass the username, right? What is the username that you want to? Okay. So I will say user from SDK. So this is the user that will be created. So once you see here, if I go back to the here, so how many users we have? We have only two users. One is my user ID, another one which we created for only for SDK, and it does not have any command line or sorry, this console access. So we just have two users. Okay, now after this program is executed, we should see this username in that view. Okay, in that IAM user section. So this is the only thing that is the minimal thing. I would say there are a lot of other things that we can actually pass, because when once you whatever the fields that you see from the UI, like it asks for several things, right? So those are all the things that you can configure here, but this is the minimal thing that is required in order to create a user. So that I'm just going with that. Now that we have a client and we have a request, we just have to execute this request. So how this will be done? Okay. So I said client against client, you just have to do this. So what is this request actually? Create user request, right? So you just have to do this, and you just have to pass this request. That's it. Okay. So what is this going to return? You can see create user response. So if you have to capture that, just to create user response, and you just name it as response. Okay. So then response. Just see what do we get. Sometimes we get certain fields in case of certain clients or certain operations, but here I don't see anything meaningful or really required for us is getting returned. So I don't. I can just still print the same thing here, saying that okay, this is my response. Okay. Now Is there anything? No. We just have to return something, right? So because I will just make it as void because I don't think we are just creating a username. So this is sufficient. So let us see. Let us try to run it. But yeah, we did not create any main method. Sorry. So I'm just creating a main method, and I will call this create user in it. Okay. So yeah, we are done. That's it. Let us see. When we run this, the expectation is this username, this user with this username should be created here. We should see something here in this section. So let us see. I'm just running this. So initially in the background, it is going to get that credential, etc. Maybe faced some issue like what is this? Unable to load region. Okay, you see, I think we mentioned that what is the region that we have to mention it. Okay, so in case if it is not there, so we go back here and you just have to mention region here. Okay, so so where you want to, where are you located? So if you go back to our this thing, here it is global, but it will usually be this one, the first one. This is where my user ID is configured. So I will just use the same region, US East one. So US East one I can use. Okay. So I'm just saving it. So let me retry. But it says static logger binder. Okay. So for this, mhm, response grade user response. Okay. Yeah. I think we can ignore it because it is just asking for SLF4J. But let us see what happened in my UL. Okay, I'm just refreshing here. Yeah, it got executed. So I can see that this user is added here. Maybe it is in the initial status. It will be set up in some time. It will be active or something like that. But or maybe that user is already active. Yeah. So you can see that the user is already created. Okay, with this name user from SDK. So yeah, that's it. You can ignore this error. This is just for log related this thing, but it is successful. Okay, thank you.